Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Noor Zarfana with the metric number of 2513406. Today, my presentation is on The Other American, a novel written by Laila Lalami, a Moroccan-American author widely recognized for exploring themes such as faith, identity, migrations, and belongings in her work. Her background in Arabic, French, and English allows her to tell stories that cross cultural and linguistic border, highlighting the complex realities faced by people who live between different worlds. Now, let's move on into the main discussion, how The Other Americans reflects not only a fictional story, but also the real-life social dynamics that continue to shape our world today. The novel is set in a small desert town in California, and it begins with a tragedy, the death of Dries Guerrero, a Moroccan immigrant who owns a restaurant and is killed in a hit-and-run accident. From that single event, the story unfolds through 9 different narratives, each with their own version of what happened and their own perspective in life in America. In many ways, this small town setting acts as a microcosm of the real world. Within this intimate community, issues like migrations, discriminations, and belonging are not just abstract ideas. They are lived experiences that shape each person's daily realities. By presenting a story within such a close-knit environment, it allows readers to observe both individually, emotional struggle, and larger social patterns, the settings to local mirror global experience of displacement, inequality, and cultural conflict, making the story deeply relatable and reflective of broader human truths. The issue that I choose is understanding through multiple perspectives, because it is one of the most striking features of The Other American is its multi-perspective narrative structures, because the author allows each character, whether they are like immigrant, a police officer, a family member, a witness, to share their own viewpoint. This structure emphasizes a key message of the novel. Truth is rarely singular. It is fragmented, shaped by personal experience, bias, fear, and even social position. To truly understand any event, we must be willing to listen to multiple voices, especially to those who are often ignored. For example, Efren, an undocumented immigrant, witnessed the hit and run that killed Dries, but refused to report what he saw because of his fear of deportation. His silence does not mean he's guilty. Rather, it reveals that everyday fear that defines his existence as an undocumented person in America. I saw it happen. I wish I hadn't, because it only brought me trouble. Page 13, Efren. This line reveals Efren's deep anxiety. Even witnessing a crime becomes a source of danger for him. His life is governed by a constant sense of vulnerability, where seeking justice could also mean losing everything. He later reflects on a similar story involving his neighbor, showing how fear spreads and silences entire communities. Do you forget what happened to Ara Kelly? I said Ara Kelly lived down the street from us in Tucson, a plump woman with big hair and cat and love. She called police to report a neighbor who was beating his wife, and when they came to take her statement, they found out she didn't have her papers before she knew what was happening to her. Immigration was at her door. Page 13 to 14, Efren. This moment powerfully shows the ripple effect of fear in marginalized communities. A simple act of doing the right thing, calling the police, result in punishment because of one's immigration status. For many immigrants, silence becomes a form of survival. And Lalami used this experience to question whether justice truly serves everyone equally. Later, Efren's fear resurfacing during questioning. They are looking for anyone who might seen the runway car, Marizela said. I told you I didn't see it. You see it was white. I said it could be white, but really I'm not sure. And even if I was, I'm not talking to the police. I can take that chance. Page 46, Efren. This passage reinforced the idea that truth is filtered through fear and circumstances. Even when Efren knows something, his precarious status limits his ability to speak. It reminds us that understanding the truth requires empathy, especially towards those whose voice are most at risk of being silenced. Ultimately, this fragmented storytelling invites readers to see how different experience of class, race, status shape each person's understanding of truth. And for issue number 2, which is immigrant experience, identity, belonging, and cultural conflict. At this novel, of its core, The Other American explore what it means to be an immigrant in America, the constant push and pull between past and present, home and exile, belonging and alienation. It portrays both the external challenge of immigration and such as language barriers and discriminations and the internal conflicts of identity, faith, and cultural expectation. Within the Garrett family, the tension between religion and modernity reflects a deeper generation divide. Driss, the father, identifies as an atheist, while Mariam, the mother, holds firmly to her Islamic faith. Their daughter Nora finds herself caught between these two worlds. Did not come easily. The last time I had gone to praise was for Eid service when I was 16 years old. The outing had ended with another argument between my parents in the car on the way back. Page 55, Nora. Take the girls if you want. I say, but why would I go? I am an atheist. But it's the truth. Page 56, Driss. My mother turned to her Quran. She had found solace in it after the attacks, reading it to calm herself every morning after listening to the stream of tragedies on the news. Page 36, Nora. This passage illustrate how faith becomes both a comfort and a source of conflict within immigrant families. Nora's struggle reflects that of many second-generation immigrants. She felt disconnected from her parents' traditional yet not fully accepted by the dominant culture either. Her father's atheism and her mother's religiosity leave her unsure of where she belongs or what to believe in. Meanwhile, Mariam's reflection reveals the emotional cost of migration, the sense of loss, the nostalgia, and this displacement that never completely fades. When we moved to America 35 years ago, many things took me by surprise. The gun shop next to barber shops, many different kinds of milk at the grocery store. Page 30, Mariam. In Casablanca, I had 2 sisters, 3 uncles, and 8 cousins. But here in California, my brother was the only family I had. It was like being orphaned. Page 30 to 31, Mariam. She had left her country with family, but she still longed for everything else she hadn't been able to bring with her. She missed her old house, her childhood friends, the call for praise at dawn. My mother had to leave many traditions behind, and the more time passed, the more mattered to her. Page 51, Nora. This moment beautifully captures the bittersweet nature of migration. Even when one builds a new life, part of the heart remains elsewhere. As time passes, Mariam's connection to her culture only deepens, showing how traditions become anchored in an unfamiliar world. Nora, too, expressed a persistent sense of not belonging, even as she grows up in America. Yet, the sense of difference never completely went away. When my mother spoke to me in the school parking lot, or when the history teacher asked me a random question about the Middle East, and all eyes turned to me for an answer. Page 21, Nora. This moment captured the quiet alienation of growing up between 2 identities. Never fully Moroccan, never fully American. This portrayal of Nora and Mariam shows that belonging is not just about citizenship, it's about emotional recognition, feeling seen, being understood in both cultures. And for the issue number 3, which is prejudice and inequality, another major theme in The Other American is the illusion of equality and the persistent presence of social prejudice. It challenges the ideal of the American dream by showing how racism, xenophobia, and class barriers shape daily life. For Nora, prejudice starts early, leaving emotional scars to shape her sense of self. On my first day at Yuka Mesa Elementary, when Mrs. Nelson cheerfully read the children's name on the roster but could not bring herself to say Nora Zogorero, twice she started on the middle name and stopped, frowning at the consonant cluster. What an unusual name. Where are you from? In the cafeteria, I ate the zaluk my mother had put in my lunchbox, while the other girls whispered among themselves. Then Virginie Cutler turned to me and asked, "What are you eating?" I looked up, immensely grateful for a chance to finally to talk to someone. Eggplant, it looks like Pope. Page 19, Nora. Though this seems like a minor childhood incident, it reveals how microaggressions, small act of prejudice, can actually isolate and humiliate. For Nora, her name, food, culture become a source of shame, reinforcing that she is other. Lalami, the author, powerfully shows how racism can begin subtly but have lifelong effects on confidence and belonging. Another character, Coleman, reflects on how racism followed her throughout her life, resurfacing at different stages and in different forms. Anyway, I'm not talking to he said the word under his breath, but I heard it all the same. Down the hallway, the metal door clattered as it closed behind Goraki. I was alone. And I was 9 years old again, or 11 or 14, it didn't matter. It hurt the same every time. The only thing different was who said it. And what I did, ran away from the playground in tears. Page 264, Coleman. This memory exposed how deeply racism wounds human spirit. No matter how old one becomes, such insult remain vivid. Coleman's experience show that racial trauma is not a one-time event. It's a lifetime of remembering, reliving, and coping. After the September 11 attacks, prejudice against Muslims intensified, and race, despite being a hardworking business owner, became a target of suspicion. I knew something terrible would happen. You remember his business was arson after September 11, and then he put a huge flag outside his restaurant like he had to prove he was one of the good ones. Page 26, Jeremy. Here, it captures the heartbreaking irony of immigrant life. Even when contributing to society, one must constantly prove worthiness and loyalty. For Dries, patriotism becomes a shield against it, but one that cannot guarantee safety. His growing disillusionment reveals the emotional cost of such prejudice. He shook his head in disbelief. I think he was just realizing that he had moved 6,000 miles for safety, only to find he was not safe at all. "We can go back, Mariam." "Of course we can," my mother insisted. But my father didn't think that was true. Besides, the motive had grown on him. He couldn't imagine living in a big city like Casablanca anymore. Page 36, Nora. Through Dries' realization, Lalami, the author, dismantles the myth of the American dream. Safety and success in America are not guaranteed. They depend on the privilege, the race, perception. This novel urged the readers to see how inequality operates subtly through everyday interaction and assumption. Ultimately, it reminds us that empathy and awareness are essential if we are built more inclusive society. And lastly, to conclude, The Other American is more than a novel. In my opinion, it is a mirror reflecting the tension, injustice, and emotional complexities of modern societies. Through multiple perspectives, it teaches us that truth is complex and cannot be understood from a single point of view. Through its portrayal of migration, it reveals the emotional and cultural cost of belonging, and through its critique of prejudice, it challenged the myth of equality and calls for deeper empathy. The author, Laila Lalami, ultimately reminds us that to understand the other, we must be willing to listen, because only through understanding others can we truly understand ourselves. That's all for me. Thank you.